fast-paced world. We have sources that come to us from all directions that are potential sources of stress. We've got changes going on in the workplace. Employers are expecting us to produce more and sometimes wanting to pay us less. And that's putting a pinch on us for us to be able to maintain our lifestyles. Sometimes we have these changes coming in because of technology that are making our jobs obsolete. And we may feel resistant to these changes that are coming in our lives, these changes that will require us to learn something new, something that we feel is outside of our ability to handle. Another source of potential stress. Then we also have those times where we got changes in our personal relationships. There may be the transition of a loved one. There may be a new member of the family, sometimes a divorce, or perhaps even getting married. Because you see, all stress is not bad stress. When we talk about stress, we usually think of something bad, but anything that you have that changes your life brings some sort of stress in your life. And when you have these changes that come into your life, these things that happen to you, sometimes they make you feel a little bit wobbly. They may make you feel a little bit out of balance. They may feel like they're throwing you off because they're putting you in a position of being on unfamiliar ground. But the thing that we need to remember, that we need to know, that's the key to us maintaining balance and peace in our lives, is that we are a spiritual being, made in the image and likeness of the living God. And that thing that is true about God, that God is peace, is true about me and about you and about everyone. That there is a changeless core that's inside of each of us. Some people call it the Christ. Some people call it God in me. Some people call it divine mind. Others of us call it the I am. The thing is, if you spend time, if you make time to consciously connect with what's inside of you, with the true you, the true self, the I am, you will be able to find peace, regardless of what's going on around you. Our anchor scripture for this morning comes from Isaiah. It comes from Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. And I'm going to read from the Lamb's Aramaic translation, and I'm also going to give it to you a little bit in a translation that's a little bit more familiar to you. But in the Lambda, it reads, "Thou wilt keep us in perfect peace, for in thee we have trusted, O Lord, forever and ever." Now, you're probably more familiar with this the way that the English Standard Version reads, "You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you." And there's a reason that I want to refer to the lambs, at least initially, because it's at the core of our lesson. "Thou wilt keep us in perfect peace, for in thee we have trusted, O Lord, forever and ever." So let's break this scripture down a little bit, and let's define peace. Peace we can define as freedom from disturbance, tranquility, and quiet. Basically, what we're talking about here is our faculty of order, combined with strength to be able to maintain and withstand anything that comes into our lives. Then there's trust. Trust means to have confidence in, belief in the reliability, the strength, or truth of a person or a thing. And then the most important part of this is when we say, "O Lord." Now, for those of you who are Bible readers, especially when you look in the Old Testament, you'll notice that the word Lord is spelled with a large L and then a slightly smaller uppercase O, an R, and then a D. And when we talk about the Lord and we talk about God, what that means is they have taken a word to substitute for the true name of God. Because in the Old Testament, they teach, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain." So literally, they would substitute a word, and the word that they use is Lord. Now, more commonly, we take the word Lord, and in some translations, it's called Jehovah. Or for the Hebrews, it's believed that the name is Yahweh or Yahweh. The thing is that nobody really knows because the name became so sacred that they would use a Y, an H, a W, and an H to stand for the name. And they wouldn't pronounce the name except in one time a year in very sacred ceremonies. So the true meaning or the true pronunciation of the name is not really known. But what we do know is that that translation is a form of the verb to be, or I am. So the real meaning of thou shalt not take the name of thy Lord in vain is that we need to be careful about how we use I am. Because I am is the name of God, and is the name of God that dwells in you. And anything you put after I am, you're claiming. You are helping to create that in your life. So when you say things like, I am sick, I am worried, I am having a problem, these things will begin to manifest in your life. So we need to be careful with our language, with the things that we say and do. And when we come to the I am, we need to be deliberate, we need to be intentional and purposeful about how we come to God. So the thing is, how do we go about keeping our mind fixed on the I am, on God, to keep us in perfect peace? What is perfect peace and how does it look? And how do we maintain that perfect peace in our lives? And I'll tell you that each and every one of you has within you a spiritual solution. You've already got the tools that you need to solve this problem about finding peace. You've got within you something that will sustain you, maintain you, and help you to prosper throughout any challenge that you face in your life. You know, these things that we have going on nowadays, we think because the technology is new, that the problems are new, that all these different things are new. We think that this is something that it's a brand new day. But I've got to tell you that the day that we're experiencing today, our ancestors, the people that preceded us, experienced the same thing a long time ago. It just looked different. It manifested differently. But they had the same problems. There were technologies that came in that put people out of their jobs. The Industrial Revolution. We have all these different things. We have relationships with problems, the death of a loved one, additions to our family, tensions that go back and forth between us and new families, new relationships as we form them. People that don't want to do the things that we would like for them to do. So those stresses have always been there. Yet people have found a way to deal with them. And that solution comes from recognizing and communing with the presence and the power of God that dwells in you. It's recognizing your divinity, that you are a spiritual being, and tapping into that spirituality. You see, the problem is that most of us see ourselves as human beings, having a temporary spiritual experience every once in a while, maybe when you come to church, or maybe when you watch Joel Osteen or, Bishop Hootie Doody or whoever on TV. And I'm not really trying to knock them. Those are wonderful, excellent speakers and teachers. They have a great deal to offer. But you need to know that you are first and foremost a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. And that every human experience that you have, whether it looks good, bad, challenging, or indifferent, is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your spirituality and to show the spiritual being that you truly are. So with me being a Toastmaster, I brought some props to kind of show you what this looks like. For those of you who can think like way back, this is a gyroscope. And you probably saw this with some sort of a science experiment. And today, the thing about me is I talk about living truth. And we can find truth in everything around us. Because principle is principle, regardless of where you go. So we've got this gyroscope, and let's see if I can get a string that's not knotted up here, because it does some really cool things. You have a string, let's try the other end, that you stick through a small hole. And then you take the flywheel and turn it and get the string threaded on it. And the thing that's really cool about this is that when I pull this string, the flywheel spins and it will appear to defy gravity. I can take it and I can set it up on a pedestal and it will stand there on its own. Thank you. I can even take it, and if there's enough momentum left with it, it will stand sideways. And I'm going to do this again so you can see it. But the thing is that the gyroscope is not really defying gravity, even though it looks like it is. What it's doing is it's using a different principle or a different law that we just may not commonly be familiar with. And it is invoking that so that it generates more energy and more power than gravity does. And that enables it to appear to defy gravity. Now the thing is that this gyroscope is kind of like we are spiritually. And I'm going to show you this again. Get this wrapped up. So now let's start out with this with a spiritual explanation. We have the force of gravity that's pulling on us. And gravity is much like the thinking of the race consciousness. It's how everybody thinks. You have that thinking that kind of pulls you down. That kind of thinking that tells you that when somebody does you wrong, you need to get revenge and get back. That kind of thinking that tells you that there's scarcity and that there's not enough to go around. That kind of thinking that says to you that when you reach a certain age, you have to be old and your time is done, and that you are no longer a productive contributor to society. Well, I have to tell you, I just turned 56 years old, and I do not claim the old word. I am still young. I am timeless because I am spirit. And this body may age, but the Christ, the I am that dwells in me is timeless. It's full of energy, is whole, perfect, and complete. And I accept myself as I am. So here's what this looks like. We've got us, which the outside of this is called the gimbal, this part that you see that goes around it. And that represents our physicality. That represents the human part that you can see of us, the part that interacts with the world, the ego, the small self. And when you've got the pull of gravity, the pull of everybody's thoughts, their existence, what everybody thinks and tells you, this is what happens when you try to stand up. You fall. The inside where we have the flywheel, that is the I am. The part of you that is eternal spirit. And it's always there. It's always moving. It has its own rhythm, its own vibration. But the thing is that we don't always consciously connect to it, and it makes it appear as if we are disconnected. So we have this pull of gravity on us. And if we can somehow turn to source, to spirit, to the I am, and connect with it deliberately, it will help to balance us, to sustain us, and to keep us upright no matter what's going on in our lives. And the way that we do this is we pull a string. Now, the string represents our spiritual practices. Prayer, meditation, whatever it is that you do. And you just pull the string. It's got its own vibration. And I can take this and even if I put it on the pedestal and I try to tilt it, look at that. Have you ever had times in your life that you felt life has just taken you and turned you sideways? See, you don't have to fall as long as you can maintain that core, as long as you can maintain your center. You can continue to stay upright, to be balanced. You see, many of us are looking for spiritual solutions that are going to take our problems away. We're trying to avoid the problems. We don't want to experience our experiences. We don't want to feel the way that our experiences make us feel. And as long as you avoid those experiences, you're going to have stress in your life. As long as you avoid those experiences, you are giving up the opportunity for you to demonstrate the I am, the Christ in your life. You are giving up the opportunity for you to grow and for you to continue expressing your spirituality. Now, what happens with this gyroscope is you notice is that at some point it slows down. It slows down and it stops. And the reason for that is friction. And to understand friction, we've got to do a little bit of high school work. Newton's first law, which tells us that a body at rest will tend to stay at rest unless it's acted upon by an unbalanced force. Flip side of it is that a body in motion will continue to be in motion until it's acted upon by an unbalanced force. What that's telling us in plain English is that whatever something is doing, it's going to keep on doing until something makes it stop doing it. So let's see how we can make this work. And just to understand what an unbalanced force is, this pedestal has gravity pulling on it in one direction, and it has the table pushing up. So it's in balance, and it stays in one spot. But if I want to unbalance it, I take it off the table, and it drops. When it hits the floor, then the floor holds it up, and now it's back in balance. So what happens with this flywheel is that it will continue to turn forever if nothing acts on it. But we have gravity which pulls us toward the center of the earth, gravity which helps us to keep from floating way off into space. And in the same fashion, we have what we call the race consciousness, the world mind, that is constantly pulling us back toward negativity, that's constantly pulling us back and telling us that we need to behave and act a certain way. And when we are doing our spiritual work, it will get us in touch with who we are and what we are as spiritual beings. But then when we get out in the world, we encounter friction. We encounter gravity. And it makes that rhythm that we have of spirit working through us and as us slow down. So what we need to do when we find ourselves in those situations is we need to take time to come apart, to take that string, to wrap it up around the flywheel, and then to pull that string. So that we once again deliberately and intentionally connect ourselves with the I am, and that we can have that peace, that we can have that balance that we need, so that things that are going on out there don't affect us in here. And that we have what we need to be able to have the space to create the kind of lives that we want. So I've been talking with you a little bit about our spiritual practices. I've kind of given you an idea of what it looks like. So here's the question. What spiritual practices are going to give me that kind of balance that no matter what happens, whether I'm sideways, whether I'm upside down, whether I'm tilted, that I still stay grounded? Question. How many of you are prayer warriors that you pray on a regular basis? Every day, a couple of times a day? Okay, that's one practice. How about meditation? Okay. How about martial arts? Tai Chi? I've got one here. How about, and this may surprise you, painting? I've got a painter here. How about yoga? Is there a problem? The thing is that anything that you do that causes you to come into contact with your true self is a spiritual practice. And that includes the work that you do. That includes if you're a runner and you run. That includes when you balance your budget. Anything that you do that puts you in touch with the true you, with the I am, is a spiritual practice. Another spiritual practice. Do we have people here who are tithers? Come on, tell the truth and stay in church. Now, I'm not going to knock people, and I'm not trying to guilt you, but I'm going to tell you something. When you do not practice tithing, when you do not practice other financial habits, you are basically sinning. And you know, we don't make a big deal of sin in New Thought. To us, sin is error thinking. It's missing the mark. And it's not sin in the way that the traditional church talks about it, but it's sin from the perspective that you believe in lack and limitation. You don't believe that God can supply all your needs. You don't believe that there is enough to go around and plenty left over for me to do whatever it is that I want to do and plenty left over for you. You don't believe that there is an unlimited source and that God is your supply. Because if you did, you would not have a problem parting with 10% of your income and giving it to the place that is spiritually nourishing you. So I'm going to ask you, for those of you who are not tithing at this point, ask yourself, what is it that I truly believe? And whatever it is that you believe, it's okay. But ask yourself, is your belief serving you? Is it giving you that peace that surpasses all understanding? You know, all of the spiritual teachers and masters that we know through history, Jesus, Moses, even in other traditions, the Buddha, they all took time to come apart from where they are to withdraw, to go into their spiritual practices and to commune with whatever it was that they knew as God. They set aside time on a regular basis, and it helped them to remain grounded, to be able to stand up in the midst of unseemingly impossible circumstances, for them to be able to stand and look danger, even death, straight in the face, because they knew that the I am was going to sustain them. Too often we take a look at Jesus and we make Jesus the thing, the object of worship, and not the example of what it is that we should be doing. But see, many of us believe in Jesus, but we don't believe what Jesus told us. Jesus told us, the works that I do and greater shall you do. But see, in order to do the things that Jesus has done, the things that Jesus did, we've got to be able to walk in Jesus' shoes, and not necessarily with getting crucified and having to rise up from the dead, but the practices of setting yourself aside and communing with the I am, so that you can honestly say, you can look someone in the face and say, I and the Father are one. And not feel as if you're committing blasphemy. Jesus ended up having to leave his disciples with the crucifixion. Do you remember the story that he's telling the disciples, I'm going to leave you? And they're like, Master, where are you going? We want to come with you. He said, you can't come where I'm going, but I will make a place for you because I'm returning to the Father. And Philip said, Master, show us the Father, and we will believe. And Jesus said something very profound. Philip, have you been with me all this time that you still don't know me, that I and the Father are one? You see, the disciples got so focused on Jesus the man that they forgot to look at Jesus the Christ and to understand that he was giving them everything that they needed to have in order for them to be able to prosper, in order for them to be able to spread the gospel, the good news. And it was that reason, there were other reasons, but it was for that reason, in a large way, that it was time for Jesus to move on. Because he knew as long as he was there, they would continue to rely on him instead of learning to rely on the Father, on that was in them. So I want to spend a couple of minutes talking with you about one other thing, one of your spiritual practices. Once again, let me see how many of you are meditators. We've got a good number of you. Well, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about that, and then I'm going to wrap up. Meditation is probably one of the most important spiritual practices that you can have in your toolbox. And you shouldn't just limit yourself to one. Some people primarily pray, some people meditate. But meditation is extremely important because it does something to the brain. It does something that's measurable to our brains that help us to find that equanimity, that balance, that ability to be able to stand up to stress so that we can find the peace and the balance that we want. You know, there are those of us who feel like that we can't meditate. They think that meditation just merely means blanking your mind out. And nothing could be further from the truth. Meditation is our ability to be able to work with some sort of an object, whether it be a mantra, whether it be a visualization, whether it be a prayer, and to work with that over and over again. And eventually we find our attention beginning to drift, and we just pull it right back to that object that we're working on. There's nothing mysterious or supernatural about meditation. What it does is it helps us to become the observer and the observed at the same time. As Reverend Sharon told us on Friday, we are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. We are not even our circumstances. But there is that changeless part in us that when we're able to touch it, when we're able to be it, when we're able to connect to it, that observes and that knows and that can reach out and touch everything and everybody. InSpirit family, you don't have to be unbalanced. You don't have to be stressed. Take time out of your day every day, each and every day, for you to take the string, wind it up, and to pull it. Use your spiritual practices to aid you so that you find that peace and balance in this fast-changing